I hope that this homily goes a little bit better than it did at the last two Masses. I have a story to tell you, and I hope I can get through it. As a matter of fact, at the 4:30, I told the story one way and decided that it worked, but maybe I should change it. So last Mass, I changed it a little bit, and still it didn't help me. There was an article in the Galveston, Texas newspaper about a woman who was cleaning the bottom of her parrot's cage. The parrot's name was Chippy, and she was cleaning the cage with a canister vacuum cleaner. You can guess what happened. She wasn't using the right attachments, and when the phone rang, she turned to pick up the phone and kept vacuuming the cage. And she said hello on the phone. And then she heard the most horrible noise, Chippy being sucked into the vacuum. Sad, very sad. Immediately, she put down the phone, ripped open the vacuum bag, and found Chippy in there, stunned but still alive. Since the bird was covered with dust and dirt, she grabbed Chippy, ran into the bathroom, turned on the faucet, and held the bird under the water to clean it. When she was finished, she saw the hairdryer in the bathroom sink, turned it on, and held the bird in front of the blast of hot air to dry him off. A few weeks later, the reporter who did the original story about this woman and the bird Chippy asked her, "How's Chippy doing?" And she said, "Well, Chippy doesn't sing anymore. He sort of sits and stares." Well, in the gospel today, this in a sense is what happened to the apostles. They were traumatized by the arrest and the crucifixion of Jesus. And they were a little bit bewildered by his post-resurrection appearances to him, and particularly his command to prepare for the coming of the Holy Spirit. Now, to be honest with you, I would say that many of us can maybe identify with Chippy a lot. Life sucks us up. Life throws cold water on us. And life blows us away. And somewhere in the trauma, somewhere in the living of life, we've lost our song. We just sort of sit there and stare. We go through the paces. And we have to ask, where is the Spirit of God in the life that we live, individually and collectively? Pentecost is not just something that happened 2,000 years ago. Rather, Pentecost and the coming and the gift of the Holy Spirit is meant to happen, to be lived, if you will, in our lives every day and in our world every day. Today's Feast of Pentecost is a reminder, just in case we've forgotten, that the Holy Spirit is meant to move us, recipients that we are, in appreciation, in living the gifts and the fruits of the Spirit, and to inspire others with the gifts that we share and we live. We sang in the responsorial psalm this morning, "Lord, send out your Spirit and renew the face of the earth." That song, that prayer is most appropriate for today in our time. Lord, send out your Spirit. Renew the face of the earth. Where is God? Where is the Spirit of God happening? Where can it happen more in a sense, or happen just for the first time? How can we, bring the Spirit of God, the song of life, if you will, to the world of today? Well, as Spirit-filled people, we're meant to be people who are people of prayer. And certainly we need to pray for many things, but particularly the appreciation of the gifts that we have, the talents that we have, the Spirit of God that is with us always until the end of time. Spirit-filled people allow the Spirit of God to guide their lives. But where does the guidance come from? Where does the guidance come from? I would suggest to you that it comes from many places, but it comes from where we are today. It comes from here and emanates out into the world. We are guided by the Word, the Scriptures of God. We're guided by the sacraments, particularly this sacrament of the Eucharist. The Eucharist, Jesus, that we receive, but the Eucharist, Jesus, that we bring out into the world every day. Spirit-filled people pass on, if you will, the love of God to people they interact with, that we live with and associate with in any number of ways, by our acts of kindness, by our acts of charity, by our acts of mercy. Where's this happening? It is happening. I would suggest to you that the Spirit of God is happening all around us, as well as through us, in many, many different ways every day. And I think that as a person and as a people, as a world, we need to see that, but also be challenged to live it ourselves and to live it more deeply as a people. This past week, I was having dinner with a couple and their 2 adult children. I was a little late getting to the restaurant, not late like 10 o'clock, be there, come at 10:15, no. I came at 7:15, the time I was asked to come. Well, it seems that they all got there a little bit earlier because they had gone to a movie, and the movie got out a little early, so that was fine. I come in and say hello. And a few things happened before I got there. And what happened was, I got this story after another thing happened, but the person sitting next to them was all alone. And one of the young adults, noted through a conversation they had with him that he was celebrating his birthday that day. And he was supposed to have dinner with somebody, but somehow, some way, the person had to cancel out. And so he decided, that person couldn't come. He's still going to have dinner at the restaurant. And he did. And as I said, I walked in and we were carrying on a conversation for 10 or 15 minutes. And then he got up and he just turned around and he had heard, nobody listens to conversations of other people at restaurants. You know that. I always say to myself, when I go to a restaurant and have dinner with someone, we're always, especially if it's another priest, always conscious of the people around us and what we say or don't say or how we say it. And anyways, the guy came over and he says hello, and he said, I have a relative who was a priest, down south. And he was telling us how he had moved into the area 3 or 4 months ago from North Carolina, and the story went on and on and on. And then he sat down, he had his coffee or whatever. But when he sat down, this young adult left the table. Maybe she's going to the bathroom, I don't know. And then came back, sat down. And about 2 minutes later, the waitress walks over with a check. And what it was she went over to the waitress and said, I want to pay for that guy's dinner. And she did. And she did. And and of course, at the end of his meal, when he was leaving, he came over and thanked her for her kindness and generosity. And I thought to myself, first of all, I thought to myself, here's a young person. Sometimes us older curmudgeons, kids, that's the word you can look up someday, curmudgeon, okay? You get a little jaded in life. And, sometimes the people's perception of the younger people is not a good one. And this is an example of the opposite, because it happens out there. It happens. There's so many good people out there, young and old and in between. And I thought to myself, what a wonderful thing this person is doing. What a kindness. What work of the Holy Spirit is happening here. Here's the gospel being proclaimed, in a way, to this person in the real world. Today, this Feast of Pentecost, I think, asks us to rekindle, to stir up again, to stir up in ourselves the spirit of new life, the spirit of enthusiasm that is of God, that is of Spirit, the spirit of enthusiasm of the faith, Because, as I said, sometimes, we seem to be there as Catholics and we're just sort of sitting there and staring. We're not singing the song anymore. And I just don't mean the song at Mass. I mean the song of faith, the song of life. Because when we do, the process of rekindling, of renewing the face of the earth continues. The face of the earth needs to continually experience the gifts, the fruits of the Holy Spirit of God, of the Spirit. Now, what's those fruits and spirits, Father? Homework for you. Go to your phones later today. What are the gifts of the Spirit? What are the fruits of the Spirit? Two of them, by the way, are generosity. Another one is joy. Somebody came up to me at one of the Masses, either 4:30 or 8, and said, Father, what were you laughing about last week at Mass, at this Mass? I said, watch the video. and I said, but, that's part of it. All of us have been gifted with the Spirit at baptism, confirmation. Renew the face of the earth. And so I would suggest this week that, we need to look around us, look around our little world, look around the big world, and ask ourselves, where is the Spirit working right now in this situation, in these people, in this person, in that person, somebody at work, somebody at school, some neighbor. We need to open our eyes to see it. It's there. Could it happen more? Sure. But begin to see what is there. And then I would suggest to all of us that we seize the moments, we seize the opportunities to share faith in word, yes, but also to share faith in the deeds and the actions that we have with one another. I think that our world is really hungering, to use a phrase, hungering to know that the work of God, the earth is happening, and we have to be conveyors of that. Do we slip sometimes and we forget? Yeah. I got to tell you a story. This happened to me the other day, and after it happened, I said, I did say to myself, you're an idiot. But I can talk to myself that way. You cannot talk to me that way. There was, I was at a stop sign. Now, I wasn't near this person, but there's somebody there with the sign, I need food or whatever. And as I drove by the person, I said, gee, I forgot. I got him right here in my console of my car. I carry with me a bunch of Dunkin' Donut cards for like $10 or so, and my thought is I have them right there, right next to me, so that if I'm driving past somebody, I can quickly give it to them without being rear-ended, as I'm going, 30 miles an hour or whatever I'm doing. It's a little thing like that. It could be much bigger. But on this Feast of Pentecost, not only is God renewing the face of the earth, but how are we helping renew the face of the earth?